嗨，大家好。今天我们来说一说 the importance of narrative and stories in language learning. So recently, the weather in San Francisco has been bloody weird. It didn't rain one time the first 6 months I lived here, and now we've had about 2 months of rain. So it's been a bit more difficult to film YouTube videos, but being from the UK, I am no stranger to rain, and I will not let this stop me from taking you out on adventures to talk about really cool language learning stuff. So today, I've got the umbrella, and we're just gonna do it. We're gonna go on a walk. I'm not sure where to yet, but it should be fun. "现在我们在 Duolingo 公园，我非常喜欢这里公园，很漂亮。今天天气不好，don't know how to say it's raining, but it's raining. So over the last 2 weeks, I've been mostly focusing on trying to consolidate everything I learned so far with Duolingo. So I've been going over all of the lessons that I did so far, and I just finished that yesterday. And the funny thing is that it really just doesn't seem to be working very well. And this is something I've always found when using Duolingo in the past. My retention is always very low, especially when I compare it to other resources and other methods. Especially the fact that they do not expose a list of all the things I've learned so far. So I've kind of had to rely on the native Duolingo review capabilities, and I'm not finding that I'm confident in sort of saying the things that I've learned. I'm not finding that they're readily available. I'm not finding the same results that I usually get. And so I've been trying to think about why. And I think that the problem with Duolingo is there's no narrative, right? There's no story. Everything you learn is just a phrase. You just learn individual phrases completely in a vacuum. And so, yeah, you learn things like, I mean, even now it's hard for me to think, like, let me think. 我昨天见了我的中文老师. But I have to think really hard about it. And I don't know, like I said, just learning these phrases in a vacuum, it doesn't seem to be really helping me speak Chinese. So with Asimil, which is a really great resource that many of you might know, which is kind of a book that has a CD, and also Babbel. Those are my two sort of favorite resources. Both of them have a strong emphasis on always having a narrative. Whenever you learn new content, new words, phrases, grammar points, they're always in the context of a story for that particular chapter. And I think that's one of the reasons why it works so well. So I've been trying to think of a really nice analogy that would explain why this isn't working, and I think I have one. So let's imagine a patchwork quilt, right? A beautiful quilt, which is just made up of all these different patches that each tell sort of a very small story, but they come together on this quilt to build a narrative, right? With language, let's imagine that the words are kind of like just threads, pieces of material. On their own, they don't mean much, but you can put them together and make larger, more significant things with them. So when I start learning words like 我,你,公园,运动,学校,中文,老师, right? These are all just words, they're just threads. Now we can start using those words to make phrases, which I kind of think of as patches, right? They're the individual patches on a quilt. So when I start learning a bunch of phrases, like with Duolingo, so I learn things like 请问你会说英文吗? Or 我学中文. Whatever it is, I feel like I'm just kind of building up a huge pile of these patches, which in the beginning is good. You need that. But right now, that's all I have. And so when I go to speak Chinese, I feel like I'm just, clutching at this big pile of patches that are all detached and kind of on their own. and I don't know what to do with them. I don't have this like narrative that I can participate in, and so it's hard. So what I think the beauty of a narrative and a story in learning languages does is that it's like it ties all those patches together into that nice beautiful quilt. It sews them in to place and forms something more significant that you can really use to communicate in that language. And I think that's why so many resources, it's not just Asimil, it's not just Babbel. If you look at Teach Yourself, if you look at all kinds of textbooks in schools, very often you'll have a chapter and it starts off with a story. So I think what I want to do now with Chinese is I want to really start working on building a nice narrative for myself, right? And the nice thing is that this ties very heavily into islands and also conversation building, which are both things we talked about in episode 4. So I want to start trying to build a narrative so I can say things like, hey, how's it going? I'm doing well. You know, should we go to a movie today? Or like, not today, I'm quite busy, but how about tomorrow? Yeah, sure. Well, would you like to get dinner tonight? Yeah, what do you want to eat? Now, I do know some phrases like that. Like I know, what would it be like? 今天 饭馆. I see, this is kind of hard. So maybe like 今天你要饭馆? 你要吃饭馆吗? Okay, so that, you see, that took me a while to get that out. I think that's correct. Like 你今天饭. So there we go. That's what I'm saying. I know all the words to say those phrases, but I'm struggling even just to put the beginning of this narrative together. So I think this next week, that's what I'm going to focus on. I'm going to work on trying to build a nice narrative for myself and essentially have building blocks so that the word restaurant can change to cinema, can change to coffee shop, can change to a museum. You know, like the cool thing about a story is you can expand and extend it infinitely, right? So you can just kind of tell a story, right? A story can go on forever and ever, and it can take twists and turns, and the topic can change. Anyway, I think that's what I need to do to take my Chinese to the next level. So I think I will stop using Duolingo for the time being. It has been helpful. It's not a waste of time. It's just that I think that as you learn a language, your needs will change as you progress through that journey. So I think that you have to sort of be vigilant and be aware when one resource stops being what you need, and you have to sort of think about what's next. So that's where I'm at right now, and now we have an interesting predicament. You see, I'm going to sit on this wet step. I'm trying to think where to go next, and there is a coffee shop not far away in that direction called Sightglass, where they do probably one of the best cappuccinos in the whole city. So I think that might be the last stop on our adventure for today. Let's go.
Right on the way.
So that was really good. That's exactly what I needed, and hopefully a nice ending to this episode. Please let me know in the comments if I'd love to know if you liked my analogy. If you have any other way of thinking about this, please feel free to share your experiences with whatever you're learning right now. I really love to see discussions in the comments, and I love hearing from all of you. So I will see you in episode 6, and 再见.